Alright, the Shinshue Dang, the Tapachin Biggie, Chen Yamlin Javala, Nila, and Janjusim Yulaki, Janjusim Yulaki, Nila, and Jamba the Nijum Je, and Gomores. That Jamba the Niji, Yahuchi Yavala, and the Shen Simjin Deva, the Tempa, the Shen Dunga, the Jaduki, some Yabala, Tambo, and Sosu Yamyong, Sosu Kori Dunga, the Jaduki, Sambata. Nengoson Dungal Tardiga somebody a wash gain and Tardiga somebody who gave in Jamba Jango, Diabo Jamba and the Jamniji Apoki to race. Monday, Jamniji gave in it, and Delet nature some give out Yungores at the Yamling but in the race. Or this issue that the surely I don't know to give. And then Lamrim Chimbogi, the Tapachimbuki, Chinim and Javala, no, Yelia, in the Medida, Cetelia. And Tapachimichi in the Javala Settle, you Chongo, the Tumba and Mulo Jango Rivesena, in Jimiji that Jango Mares, nearly a Yawangamativa, Jang Sarge, Dinigi Manyamba, Nyamyo Manyamba Yobaina, and Sedelia Kuduhora, and Tapachimichi in the Jishores. Tis not denied that Lamrim the Soyadi, Setelia, and Kiwu Kansa Jik, Tangbo, and Kiwu Chumela Mirim, but in a Jingi Sambajang, Dene, and Tapachimbelam Lokion Dushine Jango can give it to Sungore, Sungore, such also in Nitishi, Digo, sugar.
Good afternoon. This morning we looked at how the with the entrance to the Mahayana being that of bodhicitta, if for those who have the aspiration to become bodhisattvas, they need to first cultivate the cause of bodhicitta, love and compassion. But for actual love and compassion to be generated, prior to that, the meditator needs to have reflected deeply on their own situation, looking at their own experience of suffering, both in their current existence, that as a human being, as well as reflecting on the potential sufferings of the lower realms. And in this way, by training in this way, one will progress towards and achieve the bodhicitta. Moreover, we also looked at that whilst the Lamrim is presented in accordance with the sequence of trainings, in accordance with beings of varying capacities, prior to train in the Mahayana Dharma, it is, on the one hand, it is definite that one must first cultivate the trainings of a practitioner of intermediate capacity, and prior to that, the trainings of a practitioner of initial capacity. However, it is, whilst that sequence is definite, it does not necessarily have to all be accomplished in a single lifetime, in that there will be those practitioners who had gained sufficient realization in their previous life, and that realization has not diminished, so that in this life they can start perhaps with the trainings of a practitioner of intermediate capacity, or perhaps even with the trainings of the Mahayana.
In Deshindu, Dini Kapsu, Jabdro Dan, Ledela, Sambala, Sopi, Soyukone, Sarjangi, Kotumala, Bevani, Janju Simki, Mondo, Yuchonvi, Tablamiana, Dumba, Jabdro Dan Jeba, Nam, Chirisu Juves, Deda Yang, De Simki, Tapsuko Jaos.
Returning to the text, the handout at the very bottom of page 81, and in the published book in the middle of page 71. Likewise, making efforts in many means of purification and accumulation, such as contemplating going for refuge, actions and their effects, and so forth, in the context of the two lower levels of training, also constitutes a method for training the mind stream in preliminary practices for bodhicitta. Since they are part of the 7-limb practice, along with going for refuge, these contemplations common to persons of lesser and medium capacity should also be understood as methods for generating that mind.
Tumo lam yu lo chang ba da di ting yu lo chen be kap so an jam ro Kimdra Samyata, Lady Samata, the Yorua, Kimdra Samyata, Lady Samta, Chua Mitawa Samta, Undusun Yamnichi, Chazada, Denigi, and Kimdra Chia, Lady Lenjegi, Namja Samtaya, Dene, and Diva Nimbo Tushuku, Diva Saya, Diva Jaya, Sopa Sajan, Diva Saya, Denik Sajaya, Kawasaya, Denigi. Goduma Manguyor, what I didn't get Sajan, Yala Dumbala Sopagone. Didn't get Sajan Jegi, go to Mugone, Biaba Javas, Dinigi, then Tablam Naso Manguitone, Lustin, Yamneji, Chazada, Janjusim Yungundres, or that Janjusim Wundu, Yujombi, Tabres, Janjusim Yamne Yahuala, nearly at the Jandoji, Janjusim give Tablam Redis Chazan, and Wundures, Janjusim Wundures, Jason Druigi, Tab. Yala Dumba Jabruta Jeba, Jirusu Curious, Jesantine Mango Reso, Tatinigi, Wonder de la Kiuchunda, Tumba, Lamidumba Javili, Gunda Samataya, Japsutra, Jambra Samyataya, and the Divasa, Diva Jaya La Sopata, and the Made Pua Chopula Sopa, and the Nazi Gabri Kiuchunda, Tumba, Lamijambi, Nerapsuyena, and the Jigi, Delia. Jibarwa, the Gamsu Japsutra, La Sopa, the Nikawa, Dueti Chasa, Ganjele, Tapachimbe, and Yusim Gula Givi, Wondrous, curious or that.
So Lama Tsongkhapa here is stating that the trainings shared with practitioners of initial and intermediate capacity, these should be viewed as preliminary practices to engage in the Mahayana, to engage in the actual practices of the Bodhisattva. So these practices are manifold, those which are shared with practitioners of initial and intermediate capacity. They include, as mentioned here, a refuge and cause and effect, as well as others such as impermanence. So these are various ways by which one prepares one's mind to generate bodhicitta. Preparing one's mind means strengthening our habituation to wholesome, virtuous ways of thinking, that's accumulation, and weakening our habituation to unwholesome ways of thinking, purification. And one of the techniques to engage in these practices is through the 7 limb practice. And again, the key point being presented here is that someone who aspires to become a bodhisattva, before they engage wholeheartedly in generating bodhicitta, the focus needs to be on the preliminary practices. And those preliminary practices are the training shared with a practitioner of initial and intermediate capacity.
주야다 동안 세자 마인바 심제 탐제 현 심제 탐제리아 탐지기 등 동아세야다 탐제리아 판제 주야기 다 삼류톤에 장고에 대 냠내 지어가디다 두시 오래서 제가 저기 냠내 제다 심바디다 람림 나라 송야디 된데 송고로 와다.
This is a different way to express what was presented this morning, which is that first one needs to train in relation to oneself, recognizing that we only want to abide in happiness and want to be free of suffering. And thereby one engages in the trainings shared with practitioner of initial and intermediate capacity. And as we develop our understanding of ourselves, develop these skills and qualities within, we then, when the preliminaries are completed, are ready then to focus on the needs of others who, just like us, only want to experience happiness and do not want to suffer.
계산한주 디기주에다 동아세디 다 탑람나서는 아주 삼론하는 장애디 가장으로서는 소수의 동아들의 탈구도 삼야다 소수의 디기디 톱부고 셈비게 donyi tumba andinashin shen simjen digilya ndewad tukudu sembege donyi tumba shen simjen tumje dunga da dragudu sembege da denegi zawati pa nganzololya ne jangdor jehedi da donda di sunguro di janggo gore sunguro da di gongo gores.
So therefore we are being advised to come to recognize firstly our own situation. And because we already have a deeply established wish for happiness and wish to be freed from suffering, to recognize this, to recognize the causes that lead to happiness and those that lead to suffering, and strive to cultivate the causes that will lead to happiness and to eradicate those that would otherwise lead to suffering. In this way, strive to fulfill our wish to attain lasting, stable happiness. And as we train and develop ourselves, we will then later have sufficient skill and experience to be able to transfer what we have developed within and apply it to others. In other words, through coming to understand ourselves well, we can then understand the situation others find themselves in.
이나 나가서 잠바다 제와 냠는 제세 인지미지 최제와요 말레스 제가 잠바다 제와 세디 최지불파 냠는 제도 되는 셰바이나 뜻 안에 양지게 가수래 현달에 고가 매바로 차고 그래서 제가 니네상 아주게 지기지래 잠바다 제와 제디 근데 지금 최케리나다 최케밀레바이나다 남바메나다 수인에 number may be and the Jambata Zivian Chekuores, and Dinashi, and the Church came Milingagini, Jigge Jambata Zeva, the Yaman Chekuores, the Mazu Digi to a Talam Res, Mazulia, Shelia, Zivia Sambata, Shelia, and Jamzig, some Yuba in the Kiva, the nigger some of the tongue to Baina, and the Rale Digi and Shelia Digi Rasinica Digi to Port, Jazadi. Jambata, Zivik, and Yamlin Chiadi, and in Jimmy Church or Mares, and Jazada Yorum Chigi, Chela, Medimbi, Sanjigul, Yamlin Chia said to do sin Sungore.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he often encourages people to focus on training in love and compassion. And he encourages all people to do so, whether they're Buddhist or of another religion or of no religion at all. And he encourages people to train in love and compassion because it is a skillful technique by which oneself will experience ever more peace of mind, ever more inner happiness, and a skillful technique by which one will bring more happiness into the lives of others. So therefore, His Holiness encourages all people, whether Buddhist or of another religion or of no religion, to train in love and compassion.
아주 낭취나래 잠바다 제위는 롭션 지고래 디면비게다미 출루 현대는 잠제기 롭션도 사상 출루 창미게 시고래스 추도 상면나래 잠제기 롭션도 시고래 제단 시고래스 제단 출루 사상래 지 투모도는 롭션 제과 최고래 디면비게 최케 밀림신데 잠제요래스 밤에게 보울야 안 잠버체다 제와지 안지 안양지 야 잠버치고 제와지고 롭션 제 여러가다 밤에는 보울야 안신 저 분야래 잠버치고 제와지고 세야다 온도 용거래스 지자디 안 둔로이나 둔로 소소 아미게 보울야 제와지야다 소소나 지게 제와지야디 제외냠는데 지자 최케 밀림에 냠는지 고 알아줄이야 랑실링아줄 잠지기 유해돼 버려. 지자디야 지소스 영아주게 지야 여기 다니래스. 지자 여기 다니자데 인지미지 체크 지케멜레베네 체크 냠님 체마제베네 케멜레베네 다 잠지 냠네 제고 제네 디고래. 지자 제고고래스. 지자 잠지 여바이나 베네 둔로이네 호로도 잠지 핀진 잠바다 제와 쉐베네 광도 전부의 튜브 이원거래서 아주 민나로이네 핀진 잠바다 제와 주베나 아주 미드메 튜브의 전부 용거래서 제사데 니네 장아도 잠제 고야디 빼면서 계침을해샤 세대 송거래.
Whilst Buddhism has a very developed technique by which one can cultivate love and compassion, all other religions too have techniques by which their adherents can cultivate love and compassion. And for those who do not follow any religion, they too can develop love and compassion because the seeds or the imprints of love and compassion abide within all beings. It's within our very nature. And this is most clearly evident between the love and care that a parent naturally has for their children. So therefore, the inclination towards being loving, caring, and kind is natural to all beings, whether of a particular religion or not, as well as for non-humans. Animals too naturally relate to some other animals with care and kindness. So therefore, all beings have the capacity to develop love and compassion ever further within. Again, whether Buddhist or of another religion or of no religion.
Shelya Chambada Zivi Samloji Susunga Gazi Shukche Dinyamlin Chevaina, Shelya Civi somebody give you Marwa, Civi Samba, Shelya never chair than Civi somebody give you Marwa. The Neza Manzugi, Jizan Gam Jusunya di, Jidang Hanzuya, Zemle Milia, Kanga Mambuti di, Jizan Go Jungwe Tubi, Genji, Nenaza, the Netona Gangaji, Ranshin Dusion, Jigungores. Just this one to mention that the need tone and the sun say 2 years chagores. That the men biggie, Anzulia, Jikshalia, Tsivi Samba, Nubi Sambiki, Jiki, Rang, Jad, and Shen, Pamba Jig, Samlo, Denigi tone, and then also Gamma which Tigores, just a Marshu Shia La Sobada, and the Goso Reason Jad, Zewan Jia La Sobada, and then Chikorulia, but so Derka kept on Shanley Shandadi, Diniaki, that. Been the same jet, Amelia, never cartoon, social kept on and dig to simply kept on some daje. Denigi, Koyulia, Jig, Derkashu, Yachimo, Denigi Geo, Jeza, Denigi, some tone, Shalia, Manzulia, Tungamu, Gama, which Tigora, Jeza Manzulia, Zembinale, Emilia, Gama, Manguchi, Manzu, Miso Sorangi, the some Tajo tone, Gama de Suyongores, Jeza di Dimension Payomars, that is it to Elmars, that he can some dimension. Say to a Meva, Dick and the Sehuri Labna, that the Sosu Range, Jamzin Hamlet Sehores, Jason Sosu Misos Range, Shanlia, Zewa, and Jamba, Ocean never in the Digimare, Jan to control a Digi Kugore, control Dunga Kugu Marwa, the Insa control Dunga and the Digimare, Shan control a Digi Kugur, some do some Juvaina, and the Shanlia Sevia somebody, maybe somebody Yumares. Dini mena and the Mautukia la sobada, and the Jikuhotna la sobada, and Jig Derkadiki, Hangsaya, Jig, Shally, New Samba, Diniki, or Generation, New Samba, Samuel, the Yungmar, and Jalia, Zewada, Gohata, the Yungmar was, Meva the Diniki, Meva Gangati say to go, Chesadi, and to give me super Gangadi, me some Lutone, some Lotaje, and the Gangasio words, me some Lotanadi, Garikin. Gangadi Karisugo and Shanley Civi Samba, Nibi Sambi Tone, Ligore, Diba Doya de la Jambatan Civi Yamnajeris, Cesar Dustin and Ranzuki, Jamtin Yamnajedi, Che Kalena Million, Che Kalin Kainada, K Merengue Nada, and Chuluk and Shina, Chazang Yamnaji, DDS, and Dustin, Yamchi, the Jamzi Yamnazamlanalia, Daddy, Yachimbu Shuresha, Send the Yamchi, Yenzo, Dustin, Naje, the Sungorwa.
The reason that His Holiness emphasizes the cultivation of love and compassion as much as he does is because we all have the imprints for love and compassion, which means one can readily cultivate or strengthen our habituation to a loving attitude, a compassionate attitude. And moreover, the stronger one's love and compassion, the more ethical one is likely to be. One's ethics, one's values, one's love and compassion, these all have an entwined relationship. So His Holiness encourages people to cultivate these good qualities within them, again, whomever they are within society, whether religious or not religious. Because to the extent that one does develop love and compassion within, one will have an attitude of wanting to not harm others, but to benefit others. And this then impacts how one lives one's life, what decisions one takes. So for example, if if in the education and upbringing of young people, the cultivation of love and compassion is encouraged, when they come to choosing their career they want to go into, they are much more likely to want to go into a career that brings benefit to society, rather than into a career that primarily just benefits themselves or their chosen group. So, for example, a young person may well choose to go into a particular field of technology or of science, but wanting to do so as to benefit society, rather than just to enrich themselves or to benefit their chosen group. So with such a motivation, a young person may gain great skills in technology or in science, and then go on to be part of teams that develop new medical treatments or new forms of technology that aid society, that bring people together and so forth. And this ethical outlook, this expression of their ethical outlook, is deeply influenced by their attitude of love and compassion. On the other hand, if their attitude is one of self-interest, they're not going to be particularly concerned about the effect of their activities on others. Perhaps they'll be concerned about their immediate group, but not much more beyond that. And then they may well go into a field such as developing new forms of warfare, and doing so knowing that from this tremendous harm comes. And they may think they're doing so because they want to protect their own group. But the result is that harm and destruction follows from what they're doing. Another very common expression of a self-centered attitude is environmental destruction. This largely is not done blindly, but through people willfully ignoring the results of their behavior. And a further expression of a loving attitude, or a lack thereof, is how someone treats or relates to those they have responsibility for, such as, for example, in the situation of an employer. Do they treat their staff with respect and dignity, or do they take advantage of their staff? So from illustrations such as these, we see why His Holiness so encourages the cultivation of love and compassion in society, in particular with young people, but really for all people in society. The stronger love and compassion is within, this has a deep impact on one's expression of ethics and the benefit one brings to society, as opposed to the harm otherwise one would bring.
Denigi jamze komyadi jezan dushine 저기 예침부 인바디 소수기 랑아도 랑신 참아 디기고 월에 동화고 말와 제자다 디기주야다 동화세기 탑람디 소수기 삼리토네 냠뇨 냠린도 세베이나 어느 소수기 디기주야다 어느 시한래 디기주토야 소수기 동화세야다 신이 동화세토야 용고레스 온도 지게 냠린 제고레스 제자 디네 자자 디마즈는 그 띵직직을 띵디고 말도 말 소소 직부지 같이 저기 하고 집에네 주변에 현디게 소소 영어디게 되게 강한 채변에 소소 기부야 기는 거 말이야. 제자들이 직직을 띵고 그래서 진짜 띵 바인자 파쇼 현 차상 디기 용바이나 디기 주변에 소소의 디기 두고 그래서 진짜 되네자 직직을 띵고 그래서 제자들 저기 띵네 주고 띵고요 봐서 되니기 마도 안 지나서 때는 미사지 나라 직 tum부야라 미사지변에 편준 뛰고 사산이가라 니가 뛰고 마도 아니 니가 그총 니게 원에다 상주게 삼로시 잠 지지리아 제와 삼단 두스타베네 되게디는 tum부다 첨부용 거래서 지나다 지인원은 파직 초하다 뉴이 체외 삼바다는 되네 지게 첨부야요 말 직 뛰고 와 진짜 뛰는 두고 디나 사사지나 뛰고래 디면병아서 미 지소시나 첨부야디 지지를 뛰지네 아니 두세 오다 코제 디오고 호 동화 용고 동화 세월 배 지지를 두시는 삼다베네 되네 강아시 거래서 충선데 안 딜레 개체와 삼다는 개가 편준 지지를 뛰고 저는 지를 강아 용바는 안 개가 상달에 강아 용하다 냥아고 저는 지지를 뛰어반자 계급지기 지리 로제 강아세 탑람제 두세베는 두세는 인기가 편좀 튼부용 거래 저래 지지리야 아니 야고 삼다 튼부다 아니 마주매바다 야고 용 거래 제가 디네서 디게 삼도지 가지고 디네게 제와다 인자바다 제외 삼도 당 거에 계신부 쉬우래샤사디 모두 숨고래다.
The cultivation of love and compassion is something of such crucial importance, because not only does it transform one's own life and one's own happiness, but all those that one interacts with, you have a positive impact on them too. And the way to start this training for ourselves, from our Buddhist perspective, is to come to recognize understand our own minds deeply, come to recognize how everything we do is motivated by a wish for happiness, to overcome suffering in order to have happiness. When we see this very clearly in relation to ourselves, we will be able to recognize it as clearly in relation to others. And this then helps us to recognize how at a fundamental level we are all the same. All differences that we perceive are superficial. At a fundamental level, one cannot differentiate between ourselves and others. We all want to be happy. And when this arises very clearly, this understanding arises very clearly within oneself, one will not be able to harm others, because one will the separation in terms of whom one values between oneself, loved ones and strangers will disappear, recognizing that we all on a fundamental level are the same. So this process starts with coming to know yourself well, developing compassion in relation to oneself, so self-compassion, with compassion being the wish not to suffer, to be freed from suffering. When this is understood clearly with wisdom, then it's easy to apply it to others, not wanting them to suffer. And moreover, when this cultivation of love and compassion is conjoined with the cultivation of wisdom, it becomes very deep, very profound. In particular, with the understanding of dependent arising, how we understand the interdependent or mutually dependent relationship we have with others, how we are not isolated, separate individuals, but we are interconnected. And therefore, in the same way that others' behavior has an impact on us, our behavior has an impact on them. In the same way, we want to be happy, so too do others. Then we start to understand the importance of our own behavior, certainly verbal, but physical too, and in particular, even our way of thinking, that this has due to dependence arising, has an impact on ourselves and thereby on others too. In this way, we come to take far finer control over our own mind, and thereby ensure our mind is much more dominated by love, compassion, and wisdom rather than by afflictions. This then radically transforms all our relationships. To be very clear on one's personal relationships with one's partner, with one's family, but it will also have a deep impact on those one's work colleagues, as well as those one meets in wider society. So in this way, by transforming one's own mind, one has a positive impact on others. And moreover, by being part of the dependency or the interdependent relationship between people and society, this too will have an impact on those that one elects to positions of power and responsibility, and thereby will have an impact on the political level too, between groups within society, between peoples, and between nations too. People will slowly start to come to value others equally in the same way as they want happiness, recognizing so too do others. And the same way that each person as an individual is deserving of happiness, so too is each other person.
도시네 지다 댕dü기 내수 간지도 되는 경험치도 시네 캔비 토네 도 송고로와 아니 직내 양은 주게 점린 나려야 나주 미기 강아 직 가르수고르세네 출루 토네 강아 수고르스 지다 딩이 출루에 네 출루 야보레 견주 출루데 출루데 야보면 되네게 출루 토네 묘라몽고 수고르 딩아주 미 수고르스 근데 인자 나주게 아니 대 경험치가 송고는 출루 소소라는 최 가르치베네 소소게 최 가르치는 최 가르치면 소소 되바레스 소소 랑메 랑와레스 이나 출루 소소 편줄이야 무십 제거의 계침부레스 제가 되는 자처럼 지금 저게 출루가 라신되게 봐 tum부 제거의 계침부레샤스 그래서는 출루가 라신지기 잡로래 배 제수랑 미슈주어와 출루 라신되게 미tum바 차서나 디 제주기 미차사다 간이 차로 미tum바 차로 그러와 되는 자처럼 출루 라신되게 tum부 제거도 제가 출루 라신되게 봐좀 아니 지금 저기 바트들 쉐베나 오다 출루 될 연된 데니스도와 될 키치 데니도와 데니 바지 니수디게 차상 신용도 유예 차양도 데니 지지야 견주지야도 용 말레스 제가 출루 tum부 출루 라친디게 출루디 라마디게 tum부 제와 계시모슈레스 제가 데니 마제바이나 출루 라마디게 미툼바이나 니 제수 장카디 미슈쳔모슈 주다 디니디 슈쳔모디 미툼바 차야데 강아티보레스 제가 딘 배용라 미스에 차주야 디용 제자데 출루디게 tum부 제고를 주직직리에 90 제고를 해서 지난 뒤에 이제 양직이 안직이 예슈를 양직배 개가와이네 예슈 당 안지기 같이 당 지우시다 안지 힌두다 출루 가리네 지게 권바디와 지파자 되네기 염도 좀 계셔야 되네 양직이다 지게 가브리엘이야 님아 자하나 살만 우소를 출루 감몽 라친디게 주점제 바주주진 제가 디디 제거의 계침부르샤스 제가 염치기 당한 미 튼제야다 미 시도야야 미 강아시야 미 미수비 동아디 바야세 탑람직디 아주게 출루 튼제지야들이 직직리야 출루야 90제야레스 90제거의 계침부르에서 어두스네 디 안출루 튼제지야거의 백염직배 계침부슈나 빼베 두신 시분 난거래
Associated with this, you could almost say insistence from His Holiness for people to cultivate love and compassion. A key additional focus of his is that of interreligious harmony, because an unfortunate expression of afflictions in one's mind is to use one's particular religious views as reasoning to bring disharmony in society, even to inflict violence on others. And this, His Holiness regularly talks against, in that religions have great capacity to help people, to help their that particular religion's adherents, to develop peace within their own heart, to develop love and compassion within themselves. So therefore, each religion has value, and therefore a proponent of any religion should have sincere respect towards towards other religions, not just a mere politeness, but a valuing of other religions, valuing them through the understanding that those religious views, those religious doctrines, have the capacity to bring benefits to mother sentient beings. So therefore, whatever religion it is, whatever their views are, how similar or different they are from one's own, that's not important. What's important is that other religions, like one's own, has the potential to bring benefit to its adherents. So His Holiness encourages that a genuine, respectful attitude towards all religions and people and followers of those religions. And he sets an example in that whenever he can, he meets religious leaders of various faiths and has dialogue with them, and does so very publicly. And when he has the opportunity to, he will visit their places of worship and thereby show deep respect for their religions. And whilst His Holiness has always been very clear, people should choose whatever religion they want, that they should, though, be respectful towards others. And this he encourages.
And the Maze, that is not Yaman Nazuke, Tsindik Nangbegi, Cheki, and Yamnaja Zuki, Tsindik Sadi, and Cheta meeting Baruch, she was meeting Baruch some diada. And Tsindik was the chair said, the last Monday, the last social mother, don't we need to the meeting Baruch or to be some logic, the Niki Jigungorva. So the Denisa Nangbi and Chen Yamlin Chicken to get Tsindik Tone, Mazul to Lachale, Pando Yutiba, Benesugi, Ducheta, Duchenda, Denigi, Namshaki Tone, and Nazuki. Jin Nangbe Chen Alia, Denigi Sebu Yevomena, Tsindig Ton Dus Lobjongje, Layores, Pandojayores. There, Hanjig, same come review tone, same you draw tone, that Tsindig Tone, Zo Shading Azuki, Duting Ton Masungo, Shigorova, Chesada, same come review tone, some not Nana tone, this some of Denish and some of Denish Jungo said it pie, some come review tone, and part Tsindig Balia, and Nazu Laki, Pando to Yungores. Denizada. 제가 디니디 찍찍려 봐 찍가다 가다로 휴지 삼단교 말 마당지 그 롭종 지하고 그래서 천리배네 낭비 것을 취해 나려야 가르순구도 믿을 롭종 지 디나데 배주에 받아 판도에 받아 안술리 안에 낭비 최적인 집에네 주고 천리기 토로도 나지 수감 리받아 다 천리 나네라 양 천리 먹고요 받아 대가 천리세디 뒤 주어 좋다 뒤챙기 리치고 받아 on Denigi Tone, Lobjong, Dina Yang Julia, which Hagoya, Denigi, Lobnia, Monguyor, Chesadi, Pa Jango, Chesa Deni, Mana, Tsenigi, Dratanti, Nazu, Church, and the Hagoy, and Tsendig said, Dujarasha said, Tongmares. Then Tsendig be Nangwi, Bechugi, Yamlenji, Dratanti, some Tantati, do Shimji Hagoy, or that Jiktaras, Hamo, Monte, that Dobetas and Risha said. 디니섬 말에 고용인이 수다 어김제의 템바 두선비게 통화 연구를 지사 펜신 죄도를 제 로브종 제반의 신기를 마도 그 펜신 죄도 기내면서 로종 기내면서 견조의 야부 말에 안주의 야부에서의 디판도 말에서 지사 디니에서 천리기 통에 또 장고의 계신부를 해서 당연히 자사 가야 좀 지디니 깔롭 나는 네네 마 롭창 코너인데 디 조제 사람바 기세 따야야 안지 천리기 통에 장도를 해야다 디니 마진 징아주기 아니래 하는 아주 자상 소수기 잡아지 미 가시진 아는 파 예다데 에릴파 에모리트마 주도신 천리기도 장아치 아는 건조 편수 안 천리기바지 수 레제 안직 단사카나 바 로트지야다 졸량지야다 안 두스 야사다 두스진의 땡케지 두스 능고래 제사 디 마존엘이야 저음주 로망부 릴레 천리버님도 저들을 제 계시에 천리버님도 지는 계시에 두시는 로망부 저와래다 두신 딘두스는 길리길리진 두신 두제 대상인데다 데네기 데 판도하고 연구하래 제가 데네에서 다디 계침부래샤 세대가지 디기르비야다 동아세알이야 제가 미기 두신의 찌기 롭종지 하고는 데네 요다 연구하래 사 먹어 봐들 아니 찌기 남도시 찌기 남도지는 요다 데네 연구하래 제가 데네에서 계침부래샤는 두신의 경험치기들 다스 디소 경험치게 sardu에 경험치기 만족하래 탑람 오늘 세우 잡아서야 디소 책을
A further field of focus of His Holiness, a further expression of his wish to bring harmony through interaction between peoples, is his initiation many decades ago of dialogue between science and Buddhism. Because in general, the relationship between science and religions has been not merely separate, but quite adversarial, with both parties looking down on the other or having a negative attitude or an adversarial attitude towards each other. And when His Holiness encountered the world of modern science, immediately he wanted to bring about interaction, to bring about not just harmony, but mutual benefit. So he encouraged the monks and nuns to study science. And these days, or for some years now, it's been studied quite a lot in the monasteries and nunneries. and there's been an exchange program between the monasteries and nunneries and Emory University in Atlanta. And this has gone on for decades. And this, in addition then to teachers from Emory coming over to the monasteries and nunneries and teaching, and monks and nuns going to Emory University and engaging in studies there, the general populace of the monastic community has had access to scientific study. Because from the perspective of Buddhists, science has studied the material world in great detail, and there's certainly plenty that can be learned there. And then Buddhists can share with the world of science, in particular the fields of psychology and consciousness, to help science in their coming to understand and present in a way that those who are not Buddhist in our world can find benefit from, in terms of how to deal with consciousness, how to deal with problematic ways of thinking and behaving, and so forth. So His Holiness has encouraged discussion, not argument, but discussion between the world of science and the Buddhist world, with an approach of mutual benefit, with an understanding of respect from both sides, that both sides have something to learn from the other and something to offer the other. So in this way, His Holiness has been very clear. As Buddhists, we have no reason to criticize science, and we have no reason to fear science. If what there is to learn, we should learn, and what they have interest in, we should share. So this is a further approach from His Holiness to bring about harmony between communities. And certainly this has been perhaps something quite uncommon in our world, where there's been open dialogue and harmonious dialogue between the world of science and the world of religion.
제가 다 시인세 등한줄 시인세도 고야리 계침부슈리스 제가 시인 고 계침보레데 시인디 배주 야와질 따다 두어지 따세도 군론라라리고레 제가다 시인 야오 이게 군론을 버러시켜베네 배 저게 배주 두어질 따는 밀야 강한 망고대 용고레스 제가 시인 야고 여바지 나디 군론 상보지 배주나나 밀야 펜바다 안둥아세야 판도시고 루트게지 차고레 제가 시인세 등한줄게 양주 빼了嘛说呢진노 보지라는 빼지 아니 되게 야고지 빼셔 제자디 디디 야고지 빼지다나 수수게 집에 신두별라 저서 장보셔야 체두별라 빼주시오지 빼지당투야지 야고 소술이야 빼지다 디기두야다 강아세야 빼지당투야 디디 군롱 남배지게 빼지다나 밀 지게 쇠하라다 라소바디니 베지다네 강한테 책으로 제가 디나시 제자디 아주 군로라리고 제자디 이제 시에 야고여바네 군롱 전례 판바다 제외 삼로 주여바네 디기 시에니 베지다지 밀리에 판바다 강한세 자치무 두고 와레스 시에 야고 주여바지 디 군로야 전례 제외 삼로 니베스미 군내나 제외네디네 딘테 천자서야 라소바디 디니기 다 천자서야 먹고 쇠게 지지도 안다 다 인디아사 지 아주 통도버와 되네 충충직 다샤되네 미 로망부인에 칸부 갈래게스시 차사 도시 밀리아 미 칸부도야 미쇠야 차사 강아테데 지나디주 딘쇠디 시인 비지다는 수교로와 지나데 공원디니 토네 비지다나 디차게 강할 수고 지나다 아주 시인 거에디 계침부시우레스 이나다 시인 비지다에로 공로야고 거에디 계침부레스 송고
Furthermore, His Holiness has encouraged his community to engage in education, which was easy to do because that's something that's always been highly valued. But also he's emphasized, certainly to a broader audience, the importance of motivation, because mere education or even knowledge, whether it's useful or not, beneficial or not, entirely depends on the motivation. If the motivation is wholesome, one's education or knowledge will be used to bring benefit. If one has a harmful motivation, particularly self-centered motivation, that education or knowledge can bring great harm. So if we take an illustration which he often gives, if you take the field of, sharpened metal, So sharpened metal can be greatly useful in the hand, or greatly beneficial in the hand of a skilled surgeon as a scalpel, or in any of our hands in the kitchen, cutting our vegetables, or in the hands of a farmer in their fields. So a sharpened blade like this can be very useful. But in the hands of an aggressive person, it can be greatly dangerous. So the motivation is essential. And so too with the very broad fields of education, science, technology, engineering, and so forth. So much good from particular inventions can come, but so much harm as well. So where we look at the scenes of warfare that we see on our screens, all that is used there that brings such destruction has been developed in various components have been developed prior to their use in weaponry, and they have been utilized in other fields of human endeavor, bringing great help to society. But then people with not such a good motivation used that knowledge and created weapons of mass destruction, weapons that kill so many people and destroy communities, destroy societies. So the motivation behind which we utilize our skills, our talents, our knowledge, this is essential to have a good motivation, a wholesome motivation.
안도시네 다돈다니 봉이 쉬에 가르스네 디지 람림 소야디 마 수이디 가주 취마 잠제 냠는 지에게 송나들이야 당보 강아 동아디 마 시되 데니디 우라트체 다 동아들이야 타고 오래서 디 타야기 탑람라 냠는 디시 오래서 직 냠는 좀 받지 마 직제와 아니 dim 바직제 다는 가상 슈바나지 아직 야 대우들레 베네 강한 마셔야지 장주스는 공부하는 판도되네 되는지 요래서 파 제부 연대의 파시 아니 연대 통하네 아다 디가 토고 선배게 다디 토고는 냠는 지그 잠바고면 니지 공거에서 공지 냠는지 다른 바직제 먼저 최위团도시는 저상의其他的 니도 가상 슈르와 디니티제 난델 야움치기 디바라들이야 안 가르송고라서 제자다 취념는 제모 케멜에 베이나야 취제게 되버메 베이네 잠제 냠는 지역으로서 가르스네 아주기 디기투야랴 무슨 잠바이나 승아주 미사지기네 잠제 공반데 디기투 두고래 동화세 두고래 아니 지소지네 잠제 냠는 지네 안지기 디기투 동화세 두야 용고래 제자다 개가 편주이네 지지리아 잠바단 제와 숨수 삼단 그 강하세 두고래 제자 되네 상아주 강하세야 돼 디기투야랴 아니 최제화요만 잠제 냠는 지역으로서 제자 또 송나직 되네 내용도 제자디 고 송나를 봐서 나가 미 두지 감나 mö벌을 튕비게 토네 안 두시네 마 아니 지금 죄 냠는 게 좀 봐 티타로 된데 나서 중고로 와다네.
What we've been looking at this weekend is that the very purpose behind the Lamrim is to help us achieve lasting happiness, a state freed of suffering. And the technique presented as we looked last night and this morning, a technique is to understand the benefits of, for example, bodhicitta, and give rise to the wish to develop bodhicitta oneself. And then one can train in one of two ways, as either focusing on achieving bodhicitta through a training in the sequence as presented in the Lamrim, or as opposed to that of presented in the Bodhisattva's way of life. And one trains then in either of these sequences to generate bodhicitta, developing ever greater qualities within oneself. And then now I've been talking about His Holiness's emphasis, which is a different expression of what the purpose of the Lamrim is. But the purpose of the Lamrim and what His Holiness talks about so often, they have the same purpose, which is to encourage people to develop qualities of love and compassion within. Because to the extent one can develop love and compassion, whether through the techniques as presented in Buddhism, presented in the Lamrim, or through techniques of other religions, or through a technique of psychology, for example, then one will develop ever greater happiness within. Moreover, not only will you as a person who's becoming ever more loving and compassionate be happier, but the impact you have on those around you, both directly, such as in your family and in your place of work, as well as indirectly through them, that impact helps improve the quality of our world, improve the state of our world, because it has an impact not just on an individual's behavior, but on their entirety of their expression, such as their choice of career. So His Holiness is showing a very skillful way to present the very essence of Buddhism in a way that can have benefit to people who have no interest in Buddhism or have no interest in religion at all. So thereby, he's interacting with people in accordance with a wide variety of dispositions and inclinations amongst beings.
최고로 남 장주기 심 기베 야라도 로루 남 라메장 다체 로메장 예라 녜바 제라 아니 어찌 녜바 제라 어디 봐도.
Then continuing in the text, here the Guru indicates how the Dharma teachings of persons of lesser and medium capacity become stages that lead to the rising of bodhicitta, and how the disciple also gains certainty in this regard.
제자단 기부 춘릉이 최고로 남시대 기부 다 중국이 남 투모 남예 림바 자다나 징게 남예 림바 두세 자나 뒤에 자사 안에 제주 심기비 양라도 두고 탑람 데니데 두고 집에 저당 졸로디게 남미게 야보지마 로말 바도 신 바세셰게 제셰게 두신 다테고레에서 제사다 기부 충무기 투모람이름 먹고 나고면도 다 전주 셈기 셈 냠len 제발이야 안 판도 간의 연구여 봐 안델레 연구여 봐다 안 기부 징기 투모람이름 봐 장안에 기부 전주 셈 냠len 제발이야 개발이 판도 간의 연구여 봐 세데 두슬라메기 두신 파이 판도 연구여 봐 양라 세데 판도 귤이야 줘야지 안 두스 원조인 바데 두신에 야 야고지 라메 파 세셰 야고 다저고 세셰 야고지 지고래 송거래.
Then looking at this first sentence, here the Guru indicates how the Dharma teachings of persons of lesser and medium capacity become stages that lead to the rising of bodhicitta. This is, as we have been looking at, as Lama Tsongkhapa has been presenting, that the trainings which are shared with practitioners both of initial and intermediate capacity, these are the preliminaries that one needs to cultivate in order to actually enter into the Mahayana, or as is expressed here, these are stages or branches of the training of the Mahayana, in that it's through these that one will generate bodhicitta. So this then needs to be presented by the Lama, as well as the benefits of bodhicitta, so that one has the wish to engage in these preliminaries or these stages in order to give rise to bodhicitta. So again, when one engages in these trainings shared with practitioners of initial and intermediate capacity, one does so within does so with the goal of cultivating bodhicitta.
제사다 두신을 라메다 제고레세데 다제산데 대신이엘 주바 나신지레다 지산 잠니제 전시샘 개발라 잠니주 공고고래 잠니주고 심제 셴 동아자단 디기 주베게 즉 판심 야고 개발라 담보 라니 때도 안에 제 나서도 동아 안에 가서 코르 동아디게 삼다 델레는 타르디게 삼바기 용도 온두신에 안 판도 용고레세지 그 대신 증에 주바디게다 두신에 라트나로지 디지간수 주바나신 디소레데 디나신 두신 데네게 바세시하고 시시고를 마도 안지 어다 디네 시시라마지 어디 기부 중요람 일은 뭐고 딩엘람 딘타와 짐발람 냠는제 디네레슨 좋아하시네 지그 지부 10초로 세부라 마셔베네 디나하고 말와 지나 디네자다 지나 전시샘 개발에 잠니지 고고 잠니지 개발라 아니 지게 시행기 때도 동아다 자두게 삼로야 오게다 대화 되는 게 삼도 야고 개발 니라 랑기 때도 삼다데 로데 장도 야고 고고래 디 장도 지나 루스네 미바데 카부에나 시안에 따바에네 디네 야고 용고래 세지 송다데 대시 쉬바 당님 어두시네 디소레다 디나신제 바직 라트치 제고레에서 고르다.
This is as has been mentioned in the sentence, is as Lama Tsongkhapa has been presenting here, is that first, as a practitioner, we need to focus on our own situation, recognizing our own situation here in the high realms as a human, reflecting deeply on the situation as well as what potentially awaits us in the lower realms, coming to a deep understanding of the actual situation in samsara and how this has come about, so that one gives rise to a determination to gain freedom from this. And when that determination arises in the way that's described a couple of paragraphs above, where one has this deep burning determination to gain freedom from the suffering realms, then one has not merely an intellectual understanding, but the strength of conviction that is sufficient, that one will be able to focus on the situation of others. Because one will have developed such a strength of mind to gain freedom oneself, that when helping others and encountering hardships as one will, those hardships will not sway you from your goal. So this, therefore, this needs to be clearly understood by the students, and not merely what the various practices are and how to train them, but as hopefully has been presented clearly, the connections between the trainings of a practitioner of initial capacity, and why that is the starting point upon which one then builds the trainings of the practitioner of intermediate capacity, which those two together become the basis to engage in the trainings of the practitioner of great capacity. That connection, the relationship between the sequence of trainings and why it's indispensable to train in that correct sequence, that needs to be clearly understood too, or clearly presented by the Lama.
Denegi pa rimba tangbo du nyamle niba dine sumba dine che du she nyamle rimba di pa sungna da an samla ta da miba denegi ji miyul ma sonne dine sungje an ji nyamle che gore se ji benanga ji deshi ji de tangbo simje tamju sangyo go ba togu du shi de janju simge pan ton 당에 janju sim nyamle sangyo go ba toba de janju sim nyamle ji yin se di sam da di nyel che ba le de jamba de zewa 동고래 대공발 안녀야 랑게ten도 안에 고유님이 삼야디기 바장도 약고 지구래 선비도 림바 니니게 랑게ten도 냠내제 되는 시간에 봐삼다네 din 약고 기투고래 선비 되니게 봐 림바디 마송바디 다 되니게 로메짱사 로메짱 데라게 바녀바지 제라 제자다 라미기도 소시고번 송바나지 로메야다 가르 냠는 제현디네 오다 전주심 공부는 잠니지 공고를 잠니지 공부 랑기글라 신심전 비제 디기 덴바다 동알 자지 삼로 야고 끼발 랑딩도 당보 삼다 야고 하고 고걸 디니 하고 베네 라니 동아 타고 바나 신래 삼다 셔베네 디니 야고 용거래 세비데 디니 림바디게 당보 공미야 디고 니바 디고 숨바 디고 삼다나 디스 당고래 세지 라미 숨바나 신인진 소소기다 로리안 녀바 띠부 녀바 지고래 생녀바 녀바 지고래 나야지 디니게 퇴비 갑리야 땡이 녀바 띠부면은 난 소소나데 라마 메비가 다른 부실이야 검자도나 디니 저게 검자데 방hin다 검자데 제산에 검자라고 말어 라마 기스티에는 냠도 다른 냠도 요 말어와 지는데 그 바지 첨부 작업을 지나 당보 소소기 녀바 두수티니 방림디게다 데니게 조단디게 아니 기부 충을 남라 징게 남기를 님바 장이도 기부 침배 남기 원조 조단디게 하고 아니 델레티네 판도 용거바 전주 잠니지 뉴도 기투고요바 델레티네 전주섬 교고 기투고요바 파조단디 하고 하다 데니게 당보다 검자상 지름바디게 사사하고 셈네 다다 녀바 여버지고래 해서 Never jealous.
So the teacher then needs to explain very clearly the objective of the training, as well as the stages of training by which that objective is achieved. So the objective would be that of bodhicitta, the determination to become a Buddha, so as to help others. And the student needs to understand that the generation of bodhicitta requires the prior generation of its root, love and compassion. And to actually generate love and compassion, one needs to start with deep reflection on the sufferings of samsara, the sufferings throughout samsara, both the lower and higher realms. Then the student needs to gain certainty of that, as the text says, and how the disciple also gains certainty in this regard. So the student then needs to not merely understand this intellectually, but they need to have a deep and abiding certainty that in order to become a bodhisattva, these are the various steps of training I need to engage in. This is the sequence. This is how to do each of them. And by doing so, that is the result I will receive, the generation of bodhicitta. So this certainty needs to be more than just a mere intellectual understanding, but it needs to be unwavering, so that when the student is alone, perhaps in retreat, that there is no doubts that arise in their mind that could perhaps sway them from the correct approach, the correct path to cultivate, because the student may well end up following their own preferences, and thereby being deceived by their own individual likes and dislikes, end up not being successful, not achieving their meditative goal. So therefore, the student needs to gain certainty that the trainings of a practitioner of initial and intermediate capacity, these are the preliminaries to the generation of bodhicitta. So if the student, particularly if the student has a disposition towards bodhicitta or emptiness, that the student understands clearly that their focus needs to be on the preliminaries first, because only through training in the correct sequence will their desired goal, that of generating bodhicitta, realizing emptiness, will that be attained.
and jela nyamne jela oda di karachi or di karina mena sebe tezum sa da ne ji da teacher da jela karat nyamne che ko sebe samta we na de di na ji ge ba che cha ko ro ji ne ji sa de ya bo chi nge ba nye ba che ko se kim sen ti ro yala du se nge ba nye ba che ko se yala du se me nyamne che ba la dang bo thyo ba ji sa yala du se ma da 당보 림바티치 니바티치 티치스네 냠린제 림바티 야고 하고고리 디하 야봉에바 하모네 녜바 하모네 제 냠린제가 조디 곰자르도 어디네 당보 가르고 니바 가르고 하모네 아니 냠린제를 바시 용으로 와시 디상에 인지베지 야보 하고고레서 그러다.
This ties in closely with what we've seen earlier in the text, that in order to be able to meditate effectively, one needs to engage in extensive hearing and reflecting. And it's through this process of hearing and reflecting, or studying and reflecting, one comes to understand the path, the various practices, how to engage in them, and what their correct sequence is. And to do so without any doubts or lack of clarity, so that one can therefore easily later engage in actual meditation, cultivating the paths within.
Adine Jongreiki Teta Temperature Jongwa Shindu Jede Esa Dedar Majena Kibu Chimpio Lamdang Lam Sosowa Jemedu Yurjings.
Lama Tsongkhapa then continues, through recalling these points with each practice, thoroughly cherish this training. If you fail to do this, the paths of persons of great capacity and the individual paths become disconnected.
The Jongreiki city, Jongreiki did that temperature, Jongwa Shindu Jede, Gay Chimbu Chindu Jes and Gay Chimbu as or the next some downward. Because Jongreiki city down to Bene Gibu Chunga, Gibu Chimbe, Janju Sim, Yamlenche, Yamlenche, Gomrage, Gabdu Gabla, Jesada. Dambo Janju Sing Pioneer some largest Janju Sim and janjusim nyamlen chego jizan janjusim nyamlen chebala den chebar chen na ngondio ko ma den de la nyamlen chego do asme jizan di thobe donda dinige samda je ne na song nga so da dinige dungale ka nga so le cheba da cheba inne da ne je den de la ya nyamlen chego ko ra me do den za nga so yu dunga de la ta je den ngondio ko ma thogu do sambe samda ya da dinige ya je nga songge 가서래 원dio 고발라 깨베 있나야 토바 있나야 데 동아 자와기네 빠요 말지 동아 빠도 매바 용도게 진짜 라니 동아다 강아지 망고 홍도 바 있네 시안이야 판바게 치고 주토야다 잠바 가서래 주토야지 우민도 진짜다 시에 장주 시에 심자 탐주도 산지고 고바 토고 전주심 냠는 지와 디제 발라야 라니 아니 그 동아 타다 시엔 동아 타다 저와 제발라 라니 동아 타다 제 저와 제바데 고우도 선배게 되네게 삼다 이제 그 냠는 집이 qabla 디 림바티파 지 쟁고고래서 쟁고고래 마도 디균에 매점바지 안에 제 전유심 냠는 집이 태워지면 주에 냠는 집이었으니 기후 중다 투무에 삼바지 삼루균에 마다제 샤샤나 안에 전유심 냠는 약고용 통말에서 제가 되네게 전유심 냠는 약고용하라 디기부 중 투무에 삼바 중하다 진다 삼바 중하디 베마시 계신보래 사지 되네 곰 그디나 가지고 되신 냠는 제도 갑라 안에디 도시는 공고고래 사지 삼당고고래 세송고로 템버지지 제바 신도 경화 신도지 경화 신도지
So when Lama Tsongkhapa writes, through recalling these points with each practice, here these are the points being referred to. One starts to reflect on the benefits of bodhicitta, giving rise to the wish. I want to become a bodhisattva. I want to enter into the paths of the bodhisattva, and recalls the varying benefits of bodhicitta, giving rise to this deep burning desire to become a bodhisattva. But then engage in the reflections that are the preliminaries to generating bodhicitta, reflecting how, but I'm still a very ordinary being. There's still a real possibility in my next life I may fall into the lower realms. And if I fall into these realms, I will suffer intensely. And when my suffering is that intense, I will not be able to think of helping others. Moreover, I will, falling into the lower realms, I will lack the capacity to be able to engage with the Dharma and cultivate the Dharma. And moreover, what is the third one? There was the third point mentioned yesterday. The intensity of the suffering, the limited capacity, and perhaps it was not meeting the third one was not meeting the Dharma at all when one falls into the lower realms. So there are these three obstacles that will befall one if one falls into the lower realms. And then one reflects on the situation of the higher realms, recognizing that even if I remain as I am now, someone whose mind is still deeply plagued by the afflictions, deeply habituated to the afflictions, this has an impact on how much I can be of help to others. I have to reduce the impact of the afflictions. I need to even eliminate the afflictions, gain freedom from these, so that I can be of ever greater help to others. So in this way, one engages in the meditations shared with practitioners of initial and intermediate capacity, recognizing that these are the preliminaries, this is where we need to start. And the final part of the sentence, thoroughly cherish this training. In other words, see this, doing these preliminaries as greatly important.
소소와 재미를 규칙했는데 제가 되니게 삼마다와 있나 답변에 심지어 상교고모 토구도 토와래 띵케버전 아니 디 토부게 토반자 나성의 동안에 탈지 띵케버건도 고 토구도 시비 되니게 삼마다와제 아니 원도 지게 나 타바침을 취지위해서 제 취지위해서 되니 장주심 삼다는 원도 그만이 기부 중원의 투모 람리로 맞아배나 디니 고 백카가 삼다지 카가라 차지 아니 미니 장주심 기야래 판두고 말해 이내다 디니게 심지한 탐지기 된다 장주심 규례게 띵 캬바진도 고구도 셈베게 삼드네 마다하지 기부 가서 기와치 몽원도 고반 점 삼다되베나 아니 야디 장주심 냠는 제발라 아니 바시 지고 그래서 진짜 디네자 카가 차로 그래서 진짜 제메 카가로 차지 아니 장주심 기야래 바시 지고 그래서 대다르 마제나 기부 침별 람 장타바 기부 침별 람다 다번 람소소데 기부 징당 기부 충묘 람데게 제메도 그 저메 바자루고 제메 규제 아니 장주 침별 기부 침별 람 원래 마제 봐도 그 제메도 규그리에서야 돼 되게 장주심 개발라 안에 판도메 봤대 가소리 가소리 판도지 두 말에서 제와메 바자루고 그래서 제메 규고 그래서
Lama Tsongkhapa in the next sentence says, if you fail to do this, the path of persons of great capacity and the individual paths, so those of initial and intermediate, become disconnected. Here we're being advised to guard against making one of two errors. If one is drawn to the paths of the Mahayana and focuses on, say, bodhicitta or just emptiness, understanding emptiness, and not think about the trainings that are shared with a practitioner of initial and intermediate capacity, one thereby sees the trainings of the Mahayana as being disconnected from the trainings that are actually shared with practitioners of initial and intermediate capacity. So instead of recognizing that there are many practices which are shared, one will see them as unrelated to what you as an aspirant to the Mahayana needs to engage in. And in this way, despite putting effort into cultivating the paths of the Mahayana, they will not be attained. And alternatively, the second area to guard ourselves against is focusing on the trainings of a practitioner of initial capacity, but not through the context of them being shared with a practitioner of great capacity. Then one ends up just striving to ensure one doesn't fall into the lower realms, but not doing so conjoined with the wish to become a bodhisattva. So here one is being advised to guard against making either of these mistakes, focusing solely on the practices of the Mahayana, which will not be achieved without the preliminaries, or focusing solely on the preliminaries, but not doing so with a motivation that is one of the Mahayana.
Jibu chimbe lam wala male pado chanshu sem la ngeba minyewe sem gebi sem de gebi kersam di pado duen chimbole nyamne jowe dile nenden chaos.
Lama Tsongkhapa concludes with, since you do not gain certainty with regard to bodhicitta until you reach the actual path of persons of great capacity, this would be an obstacle to the arising of that mind or a deterioration of that great purpose in the meantime. Therefore, you should persevere in this.
미유디 다심전 탐지 상주 고방 토바 전주 심 냠는 제이 전주 심비 판유도 전주 심 냠는 제의 된일기 듬바기 니 냠는 제의 듬바기 위 토네다 니 냠는 제알이야 아니电상부 토구도 개와 침만어서 电원료 고방 토구도 다 지상 야와다 간설 개와나 다 되니기 고업라금도 지 동안 용거야 맞아 되니기 냠는 제가 고업라면 디 냠는 ጤ야고 용알라 원료 고방 간송을 동안에 다시 원료 고방 토구도 선배 데니게 삼단 자두 말씀에 내려야 전주심 냠는 제게 돈이 듬바디 이거로와 냥 전주심 데고 가르스는 원료 고방 토액이 코란 책임 코란다 전주심 냠는 제알이야 토비하게 삼단 거디 전주심이야 아니 냠는 제가 핑거래 디 원도 차고래 다 전주심 그 냠는 제알이야 판도 연락 차고래 데네 삼마다와 제 전주심 그 판여다 전주심 냠는 제고도 디된다라 원료 고방 토고선 마다와 제 땅에 나서에 동안에 다른 원료 고방 잠 토고 원료 고방 토고를 하다 미고와 토네 하다 미 디기 중요한 디기도 선배게 dine samdangje ngondio goba thoye samdabe ne di dine samdabe kapsu dine sam nyamlen chebe kapla ngondio goba thoye lam nyamlen chedu digi ene janju sem gyule kya ane shukin tetugo ma de che pengo ma 가서 거 janju sem 고나 samdanggo ma 가서 kewa chima ngondio goba sam thomne jigudu di dandala ane je 추림 써야 다 수보 공부 좀 되게 지긴 삼다이도 디기다 전주심고 삼맞던 매와자 디 전주심 냠는 제게 발라 디기 발치지고 그래 승원 가서래 발치지 그야 저래 지산 토투고 말이지 지산 디네 인삼 대군론들이야 지산 심전 장주심에 판윤 삼다 장주심 토부 장주심 냠는 제발라 당이 장주심 냠는 제발라 토야려야 딘장보 토구도 지사다 원dio 고방 토구도 선배 삼다 이원은 원dio 고방 토배치도 진바도 수준 수비 좀 미안해 제바디 장주심 토배 냠는 조주고 양나 주고 그래지 어두스네 제사 디네 주고 그래 디네게 삼마다면 제메디 교시 디네 인자다 기부 침별람 라 말레바도 전주 셈라 내가 민기에 시도 제사 기부 충 잠삼다지 원dio 고방 토배치도 람냠네 제바디 지 전주 셈래 내가 ben에 전주 셈 냠는 제야야 내가 숙철세 눈바 숙철 루 말해서 가서 디고 삼당 거 말아 내가 민예베 제사 셈데 계와라 계치기래서 계차 전주 셈 계와라 계라 바셰 디 바르도안 디 바도 되메세도 되메세디 전주 셈 계야야 된다도 두고 말해서 그러다 되메도 지고 가서 우리 준비 기우 경원도 고바토 진바다 추진 수비 좀 냠는 지고 때이네디 전주심 고바게야 안 된다 주고 말해. 디 된다들 냠고래스. 지상 군로 전주심 냠는 제가 된다 삼다 제베나 니 전주심 냠는 제가 핑고래스. 게래 교고 핑고 교고 게래야 안 핑고래스 두 송월다데.
Since you do not gain certainty with regard to bodhicitta until you reach the actual path of persons of great capacity, this would be an obstacle to the rising of that mind or deterioration of that great purpose in the meantime. So what Lama Tsongkhapa is stating here is that it's imperative when one engages in the training shared with practitioners of initial and intermediate capacity that from the outset one conjoins those trainings with a motivation of bodhicitta, so that for whatever period of time one is focusing on those trainings first of initial capacity, and then based on that, later the trainings of intermediate capacity. Throughout this period of time, these are being done within the confines of a motivation of bodhicitta. Because this means as one gains success in these the sequence of trainings, one is gaining success in also moving towards the actual generation, or moving closer towards the actual generation of bodhicitta. Because you are training in the preliminaries of bodhicitta, rather than in the trainings of a practitioner of initial or intermediate capacity. But you are actually training in those which are shared, and thereby they are preliminaries or branches of the Mahayana. If one does not train in this way, but trains in those same practices, but without doing so with the motivation of bodhicitta from the outset, one may well gain skill, even realization, in these various trainings, but they will not be leading towards the attainment of bodhicitta. And thereby, one may end up pursuing a path of individual liberation, rather than entering into the paths of the Mahayana. So in this way, such training can become an obstacle to the later generation of bodhicitta, if one doesn't pursue these trainings from the outset, conjoined with the motivation of bodhicitta.
Jisadan dine zadan lamrim nalma jige gibu chungo da tumo lam yirimba gibu jinda tumo lam yirimba gibu chembe lam yirimba sinba sungor ma de gibu chungwe lam yirimba gibu jinge lam yirimba gibu chembe lam yirimba sungor ma le jesa lamrim ka so sonya de gibu chungo da tumo lam yirimba sungor le gibu jinda tumo lam yirimba dine gibu chembe lam yirimba sungor le je jesa songta le.
So this is the importance of this term, shared, when it's expressed in the Lamrim. engage in the trainings shared with the practitioner of initial capacity. They are shared by someone who has the goal of the Mahayana. Likewise, the trainings that are shared with the practitioner of intermediate capacity. This term shared makes it clear it is shared with a practitioner of great capacity, not someone striving merely for a good rebirth or merely for individual liberation, but one is engaging in these so as to eventually become a bodhisattva.
예상당 저기 덴디게 삼다다 냠린 지뒤 가르 삼당으로 선당보다 저기 전주심의 판연 삼다다 심지어 탐지 전주심의 판연다 가상 년 주반 전주심의 판연다 전주심 심지어 탐지 상주고마 토발라 다 전주심의 토부도 전주심 마기는 다 민노심배다 네 전주심 토바치기 제사다 전주심 제대로 토만의 개와 치만음 수양의 전주심 냠lenche 토고래 제사당아 개와 치마래 시제 원dio 고방마 토바인등이 전주심 냠lenche 고버라사 말에 제상원dio 고방 토고 마토바인데 그냥 안손을 개바는 냐와다 안손 둥아 든조라서바 되니 개와인다 되니 냠lenche 고업균이라기면도 제사다 둥아 용어 깔레빠도메바 용어진데 냠lenche라기면도 제사당아 야 개와 치매 때 원dio 고방시 톱제 땐텔아야 네 장주심 냠lenche 지긴선배 삼다제 제산 니네기 군노 삼다제 되는게 원dio 고방 톱이 치도 아니 주름 맞아 류가 있으니까 예저든 주름 지금에 선배게 주름송 되는 저게 원dio 땐이야 튕게 냠lenche를 튕긴 주베 체도 류 소수결 아니 제 진배 냠lenche 진바다 안 되네야 뭐 상황으로서 받는 용어야 되는随便 냠lenche 되네 아니 저게 야 전주기 전주의 냠lenche다 아니 개와 치마는 띵원도 고봐 근데 지금 본선 소바 토벌쇼스비게 근데 뭐람게다 달라마 태바치미 취 모스팅에 라마다 제세 라메진이 취취하고 거라바쇼스 두스 뭐람제 두스 개와 삼다이디 제산 디 삼다이디 다디 냠lenche의 기부 중요하게 기부 중요하다 투모알람 일을 삼다다 그래서 미유 자주심 냠lenche에서 미유샤저도 삼단 거로와 다삼다다 뒤에 제다다 디나신의 기부 중에 삼다베는 다 원dio 고바 토바이네 나송게 가서 둥아 빠도메 바다 둥아 탐지 빠요 말 녀모바 빠메 바자 소슬이야 강하다 니기 폰수서 마중바리면 시행리야 판도치 투사 말에 제자 현의 판도치 발랑하 내다 녀모 코와리 개와 될레데 타르시네 안 타바치 타르고도 된 타바치네 아니 라이 타시행리야 니 펜바주투 중국의 제장이 시행리야 판도야고 주발라 마랑의 유기에다 녀모바다 되니기요 받는데 시행리야 안 판도야고 주투야 깔레하고 제자 시행 심지어 탐지기 된다래 전주심 냠lenche 판도주에 두발라 니 마랑 그 레다 녀모 코와 개와레데 타바치 제고도 선배 삼다다 이제 기부팅의 투모알람이 삼다다 자르고 어두진의 삼다다 되네 레서 당은 데링 가사다 데링 롭생기데 제 냠lenche 전주심 개발라 당보 냠lenche다 림바티네 제세제 다다 기부 충고다 투모알람이 맞아 되네 징게라 맞아 대장 세베지 소수의 냠나 바디파 시행심제라 시행심제 탐지라 삼다제 되네 잠바고 되네 니지고 되네 하산남노고 되네 장주심 기기데 예세제 도스 이름바 도스네 네 소무도와
What makes these trainings of a practitioner of initial and intermediate capacity shared with the practitioner of great capacity is the very motivation itself. So hence the need to always start your meditation with generating the motivation of bodhicitta. And a skillful way to do so is to, at the start of each meditation, to recall the benefits of bodhicitta, and not merely to run off a list of the benefits, but to do so in a way that touches your heart, so that you give rise to the yearning of want to become a bodhisattva. And therefore, then one continues into the rest of the meditation, giving rise to this wish to become a bodhisattva. Then one knows, I have to ensure that as this is a journey that will take me lifetimes, I have to ensure that I can continue to train from lifetime to lifetime. Because if I fall into the lower realms in my next life, my suffering will be too intense for me to be able to continue to train. Moreover, I'll lack the intelligence the capacity to be able to train, and thirdly, I won't be able to meet the Dharma. I will not be able to train. I have to thereby create the causes that ensure I achieve further good rebirths. And there one meditates on the 5 causes, reflecting first on ethics, developing the determination that through one's physical behavior and speech, I will not bring harm to others. And conjoined with this, wherever I can, I will help, I will give of myself to help others materially, help others with my skills and talents, help them with my friendship. And moreover, that's the second cause of generosity, and the third cause then of patience. Whenever I encounter hardships, I will skillfully deal with these, recognizing the greater goal that I want to achieve, that greater goal of becoming a bodhisattva. That is what counts, not being overwhelmed by any hardships I encounter. And fourthly, the fourth cause, that of joyous perseverance, recalling the virtue that you've engaged in, generating joy, looking forward to opportunities that will come today to engage in further virtue, generate joy. And then finally, it reflects on make prayers such as to never be separated from one's Mahayana spiritual teachers. So in this way, one creates the causes that will ensure one achieves excellent rebirths, which are primarily that of ethics, that is the primary cause to lead to a good rebirth. Generosity ensures that one has an abundance of material conditions. Patience ensures that one's sense faculties are complete and one readily has harmonious relationships with others. Joyous perseverance ensures that one delights in virtue, seeks out virtue, has a virtuous personality, a wholesome personality. And prayer then helps to ensure that one encounters Mahayana spiritual teachers. So it's that motivation that ensures, the motivation of wanting to become a bodhisattva, that ensures that this meditation on ethics, generosity, patience, joyous perseverance, and prayer is a practice that is common or shared with the Mahayana, or the practitioner of great scope, and not just a practice of someone of initial capacity. So this is then also the case with the trainings shared with the practitioner of intermediate capacity. Once again, one generates the motivation of bodhicitta. One then perhaps does the reflection, if one is still training, on the practices of relating to a practitioner of initial capacity before moving to the practice of intermediate capacity. And here, in the context of a shared practice, one recognizes that as long as my mind stays so influenced by, dominated by the afflictions, I cannot really be of meaningful, lasting impact on the lives of others. As long as I am so influenced by anger, by self-interest and so forth, I'm constrained in the quality or the level of benefits I can bring to others. I have to gain freedom from these afflictions. And then this way, one's meditations relating to the practices associated with intermediate capacity become practices which are shared because it's within the confines of wanting to become a bodhisattva. So this then is a brief summary of what we've also looked at this weekend, which is the stages of training one's mind in order to become a bodhisattva, which is indispensable in order to attain full and complete enlightenment. So thank you. Then we can conclude our weekend there. Thank you very much.